in the making. You are a masterpiece in the making. That's my talk for today. We are, I thought she was lovely when I found her to set the tone for what we're talking about this week. So this month we're exploring the realms of joy. And the monthly theme is about choosing joy. And I keep reminding us that joy is the natural state of our being. It's not something that comes to us just if things are going good or when things are going good. It's alive within us, but we have to choose it. Because all the other stuff of life is going to happen too, and the things that pull us off our balance or take our focus or, push our buttons. And in any one moment, we can choose to go into that negative spiral, into the negativity and the fear and the worry and the stress. Or we could go in the higher spiral, moving up into that place of understanding that even though we may be experiencing some challenge, there's joy for us. So we have a choice. We're always at choice. And it's important for us to remember that sometimes struggle and pain is part of the process, but suffering is optional. Okay, so just like childbirth, and sorry men, I'm going to go back to this one because it just is such an easy one to use, but this is the truth for you too because you birth stuff, just not in the way that women do. That's as far as I'll go with that one. But there is some pain associated with that experience. There is, I'm trying not to go back into my trauma about my childbirth, but when I had my kid. But yes, pain is part of the process, but suffering is optional. Suffering is that revisiting of the negativity and staying in it so long that that's all you get. Sometimes there is a challenging situation that makes us stretch, that makes us grow, that makes us step into an aspect of ourselves that we wouldn't normally do, unless we had that impetus to move in that direction. And that's kind of the pain piece of it. But there's still joy in that. There's still joy there for us. So this concept comes from the book of the month. I am really loving this. I need to tell you, I'm really loving this. And the Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And there's moments that in this week, I've had an interesting, crazy week. We've had so much going on. It's a really busy time. I feel like I've been scheduled every minute. And then when I would sit down to do my spiritual practice and my study, I would just look at the cover of the book. And I don't know about you, but when you can see it, I should have put a slide up of it. But when go in the bookstore and look at it, because these two faces, this is the moment that they met for the first time. They had a week of dialogues on joy. How great is that? I want to sit down with the Dalai Lama and talk about joy for a week. That'd be amazing to talk to him for a week about joy. And so this was the moment where they met and their faces are so close together and there's such joy and love in that I just felt like, okay, in my crazy, insane week this week, I'm just going to look at their faces and feel that truth within me. It was a reflection because it's alive within you. And so the idea is to find what's going to remind you on the outside of what's alive with you on the inside. That we are called to find something that reminds us of that. And you all did really well this week because you came here, so I can be the outside reminder that there's joy right in your center. There's joy where you are. So I'm telling you now, so you got the end. Just in case something happens in the next 15 minutes. Or so. Optimistic 15 minutes. Okay. All right, so the idea is that we're trying to discover ways. This month what we're doing is I'm trying to build our toolbox to discover ways, to remember ways to pull up that joy in moments of challenge, in moments of difficulty. And one of the things that I'd like for us to stick in that toolbox is a remembering that life is an unfoldment. Okay, I know it's a simple concept, and everything I'm going to say today, I want you to know that I know you already know this. Okay, oops, they're in. Okay, I want you to know that I know that you already know this. That this is not new information, but we need to be reminded. I need to be reminded. That's why I'm doing this talk today, because I need to be reminded that life is an unfoldment. In any one moment, it feels like it's going off the tracks. Sometimes it can feel like life is careening off a cliff. Sometimes it feels like this is wrong, right? Have you ever heard yourself say that? This is just wrong, In my family, I can't remember what cartoon it was, but there's some movie, because of course I have a 10-year-old, so we see all the animated movies. But there's one that said, my husband's gonna laugh now, because it goes, that's not right, oh, it's a book. It's a Splat the Cat book. And the comment in the Splat the Cat book is, that's not right. You know, the little kitty will do something and somebody will say, that's not right, you know. So in my house, what we say is, that's not right. Everywhere we go, when something happens and it's not working, that's not right. And so that's the sound of, in my head, when life starts to look like it's not supposed to. That's not right. What's up with that, you know? Well, wait a minute. You know, at any one moment, we can judge what's happening as right or wrong or good or bad, but the truth is that it's an unfoldment, and we're in the middle of it. If your life feels uncomfortable, if your situation feels unsteady, it just means you're in the middle of it. It hasn't resolved itself yet. It's not done yet. You're in the middle of a cycle. Think of the wash cycle. What happens? What does life look like in the middle of that spin cycle? Yeah, yikes, right? Sometimes it feels like that. So it's an unfoldment. Life reveals itself. And it reveals itself in its own time, and sometimes I get mad because it's not my time. And sometimes it reveals itself in its own way, and I get really frustrated because it's not my way, and let me tell you, I have an idea of what my way is supposed to unfold like. And it doesn't, right? And I'm reminded of the prayer that Jesus said on the Mount of Olives when he said, okay, God, not my way, but thy way. Not my will, but thy will. Right? That at some point we are called or stretched or pushed. You could think life is doing any one of those things. It's calling you, it's stretching you, or it's pushing you into an understanding that life is an unfoldment. That God is unfolding as you. That there's not a static thing. If we can take any one moment and judge it as good or bad, you realize that you're out of the unfoldment of life. Because there is something in every moment, every unfoldment for you. That there is something for your freedom, for your joy, for your growth and expansion. Life, it's like a good book, right? Or a good movie. I went to the movies last night. I saw Black Panther, finally. I was like waiting to see this movie, and I loved it. It was awesome. And do you ever have that friend that you go to the movies with that sits next to you, and while you're watching the movie, they're like, what's going to happen then? How are they going to deal with that? How's that going to work? Wait a minute, what are they doing with that? How is that, you know? And I'm not saying I have that. I don't have that, okay? I don't have that friend that does that. But do you know what it's like when I am that friend that says it out loud, you know? Like, can you just wait and watch the movie and see how it's going to unfold? Because it's going to unfold. They're going to answer that question, you know, of what happened to that key, or who stole the plutonium, or whatever. What was that stuff? I don't know what it was called. Whatever. But, you know, who stole the whatever, or what's happening? You know, it's like our lives are like a really great movie. Your life is a fabulous, wonderful story that's unfolding. It's a great novel. It's a great path. It's a great story, but it's unfolding. And so if we're judging any 1 minute of it, we haven't seen how it's resolved yet. We haven't seen how the different chapters, the different adventures are coming into experience for you. Because in any one moment, you're just at the beginning or at the middle of it. Maybe you're kind of close to the closing of a chapter, or in between the chapters. How does that feel? How does that feel to be standing in between chapters of your life when you're coming to a completion of one and you can see it's really closing and it's moving into another? That can be a very unsteady place. It can be a very uncomfortable place. But the truth is that it's unfolding for you, for your joy, for your expansion, for your expression, for your growth. You are being called to your highest and greatest expression of who you've come here to be. The Dalai Lama in the book says that so much of our unhappiness originates within our own mind and heart, and how we react to events in our life. And so I loved the reading. I'm losing my mic today. Maybe my ears are slippery or something. I've never had that problem before where my ears are slippery. I didn't use any new hair products, but okay. All right. So I love the reading that John did today about the whole concept of mental immunity. That is what we're calling forth. to develop is a mental immunity. You know, I learned so much about the body going through my health challenge over the last couple of years, and you know, the forefront of cancer research and cancer treatment is all about strengthening your immune system. Because what they know is that our bodies are amazing. Remember, my idea for you is to remind you that you are a Maserati. Your physical body is a Maserati. Okay? And we need to care for ourselves. It's that delicate, that complex, that beautiful of a machine as what I would call a Maserati. And so you want to care for it like you would care for a Maserati. I kind of feel like I would go out and rub a Maserati with a diaper to clean it. You know what I mean? Like, I would be careful with it. I would be putting that expensive, not only gas, but, you know, really good oil and, you know, take it to really good doctors. That's what we want to do for our physical bodies. You're a Maserati. But the idea is that that when we strengthen our immune system, our bodies know how to handle what's happening within it. Our bodies know how, if we let them, how to take care of what's happening, and that's by strengthening our immune system. And when your immune system's strong, you don't get the flu B that's running around and running rampant in my child's school. You know, you don't get the cold. You don't get those things because you have a strong constituency, not constitution. Yeah, I get those all mixed up. Constitution. You have a strong constitution, right? Well, it's the same thing with our minds. We do our spiritual practice. Again, this is something that we all know, but there's a reason. There's something in the way that this was expressed that really touched me deeply this time, and it's because when we are doing our spiritual practice, when we are committed to knowing the truth of who we are, when we are committed to deepening our understanding and our resonance, our feeling of that divine life as the truth of our being, then we start to build up our mental immunity. Then when somebody says something, do you ever have somebody who says something that's a little bit thoughtless, kind of like a mental slap a little bit, when it just happens, you know, somebody will say something, a little couched insult kind of a thing, you know, then it doesn't hurt. Because we are strong enough in knowing who we are. And we're strong enough in being connected to the truth of our being that anything from the outside is not going to affect us. When we build up our mental immunity, what we do is we understand our place in life. We understand where we belong. We understand who we are, and we understand why we're doing what we're doing. And we do that from a place of connection, not from a place of separation, not from that negative, limited idea of who we are, or not from that unthoughtful, you know, sometimes we just go to that default. We go to that default idea of what we believe about ourselves. And sometimes if we don't examine how we feel or what we think about ourselves, where our mental atmosphere, if we don't examine it, then those beliefs come from way early in our lives. And not from a place of let's bless our families, let's bless the people we've come up through, you know, because they did the best that they could with what they had at the time. But it wasn't necessarily enough to free our souls, right? It wasn't necessarily enough. Our teachers and our parents and the experience that we've had coming up in our early days has not necessarily set us up to fly free. You know, it doesn't necessarily do that, but it does enough for us to wake up to see if that's true or not. Am I, you know, not smart enough to do something? Am I not pretty enough to do something? Am I not whatever? Fill in the blank. But those beliefs have come from way early on, and they're still operating unless we question them. Unless we question what the truth is about these. If we wake up to it, and then we start to see that that's not the truth. That we are capable, that we are supported, that we are a loving presence, that we are a part of the divine beauty of life, that we have a gift to give. But so many of us walk through life feeling like we're broken, feeling like we're worthless, feeling like that we're lacking. That's a message that so many people, and that's baggage that so many people carry. I really wish I could everyone let that one go. Because you're not broken. Because you're not worthless. You're a masterpiece in the making. You are the divine gift unto this life. In my own personal spiritual development, I had a huge realization. And I say this a lot, and the reason why I say it a lot is because I had a huge spiritual realization when somebody stood up on stage and said, and I wish I could remember who it was because I'd give them credit, but someone stood up on stage and said, at some point God had a thought and it was you, and you were created. God loved you so much that it had a thought that was you, and you were created forever. You are not just something that's just this nice little thing, okay, you can have this life or whatever. You are an infinite being, which means that you are eternal. And if you are loved so well to be created as an eternal being, there's some worth there, don't you think? God is intentional. God is conscious. God is specific. And there was a need in this universe, in this life, at this time, and you're filling it. You are a masterpiece in the making. God is alive as you, and you are supported. Now the issue we have is that with this idea of mental immunity is that when we get comfortable with our spiritual practice, when we don't challenge ourselves, when we don't question some of these beliefs that we have, we kind of sit back and allow the hamster wheel of life to take us, and we just keep moving. I don't know about you, but sometimes I step into my week, and then all of a sudden the escalator that is the week brings me to Sunday right again, and here I am on the stage again going, wait a minute, no, it was last week. How did this week go by so fast? When we allow that to happen without pausing and being conscious, we miss all of the opportunities that life has to reflect back our glory. We miss all the opportunities that life is trying to express to us and allow us for that next spiritual step, that next growth, that next evolution. So when we're having a challenging week, when things are coming up and stuff is happening, we can pretend like, no, I just got to get through this. Or we could be conscious and say to life, okay, what is this for me? What do you want me to know out of this? When we wake up to that idea, we start to move out of our habits of thought. The problem we have is that we get into these ruts, and it's in our brain, they're literally ruts. We get patterns of thought. And the way that when we start to habitually think in a certain way, it creates a rut, literally a little rut in our brain. And it's really hard to get out of it. So changing up our thought processes, being conscious, asking ourselves questions, moves us out of that habit of thought. And when you're in a habit of thought of thinking that you're limited, of thinking that you're worthless, of thinking that there's not enough for you, and thinking the way that you have thought unconsciously for your whole entire life, it's really hard to get out of that. But the first step is to move into a greater perspective, a deeper understanding of who you are. God expressing as you. I keep going back to that. There's an infinite presence that's alive right where you are. And so as we start to lean into that, as we start to feel it, as we start to know it, we can jump the tracks. We jump the tracks in our brain and we start to think differently. And when you think differently, you live differently. When you open to having certain things answered or shown to you, it shows up. And things start to change. That's the first step. But it takes a little bit of commitment. I picked that reading for John specifically because of the part that talks about how you could have the best way or you could have the quickest way. Right? You could have the best solution to a challenge or you could have the quickest solution to a challenge. And the best solution is never the quickest one. And in this situation, it's not. Because what it takes is a dedication and a commitment to yourself and to the presence that has called you. And so we need to develop and deepen our habits of knowing who we are. And when you start to do that, you get the best solution. Because you're open. You're receptive. We're so used to getting the quick fix, right? We're the pill-popping culture at this point, And I'm not saying anything bad about medication and doctors. You all know I've been to 1 billion of them over the last 3 years, and I bless the medical world, and I bless traditional medicine, and all of it, because I know God's in all of it, right? But it's not always the quickest way to get out of pain is going to be the best solution for you. Sometimes sitting with a little discomfort is okay until you get the message of it. And I find that when you get the message of that discomfort, sometimes it goes away without the pill. Sometimes it goes away because it's there for you. It's there for your growth and your understanding. And so when we want to turn away from something so quickly, we're not allowing life to give us its messages. And so that's the truth with our physical bodies. That's the truth in our relationships. That's the truth in the way that we walk through the world. If we can be present with what is and allow it to speak to us. But the issue is this: we need to be receptive. We need to pick up the phone when it rings. We need to not ignore the signals or pretend it's not happening. We can't deny that there's a challenge. We can't deny that we feel what we're feeling. Because these negative thoughts and these negative emotions and these negative feelings, you can't ignore them and you can't pretend that they're never going to happen. I wish I could say that you won't have a sad day. I wish I could say that you'll never feel alone. But that's not true. And I only try to speak truth from this pulpit of mine. There may be a sad day for you. There may be a day where you feel alone. There may be a day where you feel like that all is lost. And I really encourage us to be with those feelings enough to get the gift of what's really behind them. Because when we can be with that, one of the things that I've realized, especially with loneliness, I learned that loneliness, the experience of loneliness, is when God wants you for itself. God wants you for itself. And so when those feelings come up, when I have an experience of that, my personal path of it is to give myself a day of spiritual practice. If I'm feeling alone, then I clear my schedule and I meditate and I walk in nature and I contemplate what's happening and I feel the presence within me. And then inevitably the next day I wake up and there's great joy. And I don't feel alone. I feel connected to all things. And so our life is there to speak to us. Our life is there to guide us and remind us that we are unfolding. In this philosophy, we talk a lot about that we are whole, perfect, and complete, right? Whole, perfect, and complete. We use that terminology a lot. I'm whole, perfect, and complete. If you're in prac class or if you've taken classes about learning about prayer, that's one of those things. And the whole concept of the word perfect, that's a stumbling block for a lot of people. It's the difference between when we say an affirmation that resonates within us or we say an affirmation that we bump up against. Have you ever done that? Because it just doesn't resonate with us. Someone said to me once, well, I can say, I'm abundant. I still have $10 in my bank account. What does that do? What's that going to do for me, And I encourage everybody to take the Prac 2 Students Affirmations Workshop next Sunday. It's going to be great to learn about how to put these into practice. Because the truth is we're not trying to say something that's not real. And so going back to the whole concept of perfect, what I find is that when students start to understand what perfect really means, because let's face it, I've had a couple of surgeries, I've had some challenges, my body's never going to be the same. You tell me I'm perfect, there's a part of me that's going to say a swear word back at you. You can try and convince me I'm perfect. But that's not, but what's perfect? We have to look at what perfect means. So in any one moment, everything is perfect, right? So I think of it this way, that everything is an infinite possibility in the mind of God, but when something happens, it's God ordained. So if something is occurring, it's God ordained. There's a perfection to it because it's there in that moment for a reason. And I like to think of it as an impetus, right? So those big challenges are impetus for something, right? So, and I'll use my own example as my experience with cancer. When I was diagnosed, you can't get a diagnosis of stage 3 cancer and have it not change you, right? If when someone says that to you, I hope you never get that moment where they say it to you, because it's a very big moment. But things change. In that moment, there's a shift. There's a change that happens, and something awakens within us. And I couldn't stand there and say, okay, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and hope that I get better. Wait, no. Life changes when those moments happen. And we can allow ourselves to, again, spiral up or spiral down. Are we going to spiral into the fear and into the worry and the question of what's possibly going to happen and what pain is coming forward and the difficulty of it? Or are we going to spiral up to our trust and our understanding that life is unfolding and that there's joy in all of it and that there's a reason why everything happens? There's a reason. There's a gift out of it. And so we're called to do that self-inquiry. We're called to understand what perfect means for you. So any one moment is perfect for us. But only you are the one who can ascertain how it's perfect for you. No one else can tell you that. I wish I could tell you how your life is perfect for you, but I can't. Only you can. And you know deep within, if you allow yourselves to listen to your hearts, you know how it's perfect for you. And whatever that challenge is that you're facing, whatever that life challenges that you're trying to step through in this moment, and we've all got them, you know, whether it's a big one or a little one or you're in between things or whatever's happening, something is happening in your world. I know it, right? Give me a nod. Right? Yeah, okay. Just making sure I know what I'm talking about. But the idea of it is that you are the only one who can mine the gift of it, of the message of it for you. But you got to be brave enough and strong enough to ask the question. So I think of it this way, if we put these two things together, the first concept I talked about today is that life is an unfoldment, and when something happens, it's perfect. When you put those two concepts together, you get the understanding, you get the broader perspective of what perfection in life really means. You are a masterpiece in the making. It is an unfoldment happening. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, he said this: man is potentially perfect, but free will and self-choice cause him to appear imperfect. And from Ephesians, for we are God's masterpiece. He's created us anew in the Christ, so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. And so I want to remind you that the Christ, whenever they use Christ and Christ Jesus, they're talking about that exalted state of consciousness that Jesus attained. Right? And so it was through that exalted understanding of the oneness of all life that we realize that God is unfolding for us, as us, so that we can do the things we have come here to do. So the idea that was the challenge, what I like to do is think of these concepts, and then I think about what gets in the way for us. That's how my mind works when I put these things together. So we have this concept of the idea that you are a perfection unfolding. And then I try to think about what gets in the way. And what gets in the way for us right now is that those beliefs that we're old, that we're broken, that we're imperfect, that we're damaged, that we're not useful, whatever that negativity or that limitation is that's alive within us. And the question is, what are you going to believe about yourself? If you're going to believe that that's the truth about you, then you're going to go down another path. And if you can bring yourself back to understanding that you are the gift of the divine to the world, you're going to go in a different direction. I came across some information about some people that we've heard of who didn't believe the negative things about them, but they were there. So I want to share some of these with you. I have a few of them. I couldn't cut them. I was interested in all of them, so I should go fast. Okay. So, did you know that Walt Disney was fired from the Kansas City Star because his editor felt that he lacked imagination and had no good ideas? I'm not lying. Several more of his businesses failed before the premiere of his movie Snow White. He went on to become the guy who redefined American childhood. Oprah. One of Emily's babysitters met Oprah yesterday. There's a picture of her on Facebook. I was like, where is this? I was very excited. But Oprah, she was publicly fired from her first television job as an anchor in Baltimore for getting too emotionally invested in her stories. I don't need to say anything else about her. $3 billion she's worth, $3 billion, okay. Steven Spielberg was rejected by the USC School of Cinematic Arts multiple times. He created the first summer blockbuster, 3 Academy Awards, 4 Emmys, 7 daytime Emmys, and his 27 movies have grossed more than $9 billion. R.H. Macy had a series of failed retail ventures throughout his early career. But at the age of 36, he launched R.H. Macy and Company, which grew to become Macy's, the largest department store chain in the world. Vera Wang failed to make the 1968 U.S. Olympic figure skating team. I thought that was really interesting, I didn't know that. Then she became an editor at Vogue, but was passed over for the editor-in-chief position multiple times. She began designing wedding gowns at 40. And today she's one of the premier designers in the fashion industry with businesses worth over $1 billion. And they say that she got back into the figure skating realm by designing costumes for Nancy Kerrigan. Thomas Edison, let's go back a little bit. Thomas Edison's teachers told him he was too stupid to learn anything. They were really careful about the children's thoughts then, you know? They were really compassionate and supportive. Okay, he was too stupid to learn anything. Okay, after that, things stayed bleak for a while as Edison went on to be fired from his first 2 jobs for not being suitably productive. He went on to hold more than 1,000 patents and invented some world-changing devices, the phonograph, practical electrical lamp, and a movie camera. J.K. Rowling was a single mom living off welfare when she began writing her first Harry Potter novel, and she became the first billionaire author in 2004. And, I like this one, while developing his vacuum, Sir James Dyson went through 5,126 failed prototypes and his savings over 15 years. But the 5,127 worked. And the Dyson brand became the best-selling bagless vacuum brand in the United States. He's now worth an estimated $4.9 billion, according to Forbes. Okay, what did they believe about themselves? Did they believe that? Did they believe those failures? Did they believe that they were broken? Did they believe that they were on the wrong track? How many times have you stepped forth in that dream that you've got within your heart? How many times have you allowed yourself to go for it and to not let what somebody else says impede your path? Let not what some failure to hold you back. You're never too old to live your dream. It's never too late because you are the masterpiece in the making. You are God's masterpiece. And you have the power and the presence of the one behind you. And so we can believe the limitation, we can believe those things about ourselves, but it's not going to get us anywhere. It's not going to make our life better. It's not going to bring more joy. It's just going to build a wall between us and our joy. But we weren't made for that. We weren't called into being by the infinite divine presence of life for eternity to be mediocre. We're not made for that. We weren't created to lay back and say, okay, well, maybe next time I'll speak up, or maybe next time I'll share, or maybe next time I'll give, or maybe next time I'll do whatever it is. We're wasting our lives if we're doing that. And we're wasting the gift that God has given us. Each of us is necessary and needed in this life, and especially right now. And so whatever we need to do to find that truth, to express it and to be it, that's the pathway to our joy. And what I know is that as we step forth in this week, as we step forth in this life, surrendering those limited ideas, surrendering those limited belief systems, we step into that power and that presence of who we really are. And we create this divine blessing that is this life. That's why we're here. There's great joy here for each of us, and we ought to have it, because you're a masterpiece in the making. And so it is.